Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
We're here to discuss the latest edition of An Architectural Guidebook to Los Angeles, originally authored over 50 years ago by the renowned architectural historians Robert Winter, described by LA Magazine as both the spiritual godfather and father of LA architecture, and the late, great David Gebhard. This text is a seminal vade mecum of Los Angeles architecture, a Bible of built LA that explores every rich potency of the often relentless but sometimes relenting LA cityscape. And now it has been revised and edited extensively for a 6th edition by award-winning LA urban walker and Robert Winter trusted collaborator Robert Inman, who is with us today. And we're so happy to have him here. Robert is the award-winning author of A Guide to the Stairways of Los Angeles and Finding Los Angeles by Foot, Stair Street Bridge, Pathway and Lane. And again, we're so pleased to have him with us. Please help me give a warm welcome to Robert.
Okay, let me get organized here. My glasses, let's make sure I can see. Well, hello, and thanks for coming. I am here, of course, to, just repeating what he said, talk about our release of this beautiful and updated version of the seminal guidebook to the built environment of Los Angeles County. And as you can see here, this is the 6th edition of a project that began more than 50 years ago. Many people simply refer to our new book as they have to the previous editions through the decades as the Gebhard Winter Guide. So let's see, I'm going here, right? Nope, let's see. I'm doing advanced, I'm hitting that one. Okay. Okay, so I want to talk some about what's inside the covers and how it works. So what's this book about? I start with a quick illustrated list of 10 regional landmarks, iconic buildings that are associated with Los Angeles County. These buildings reflect the image of greater Los Angeles held by both by Angelenos and by the world. And I know people who, as much as they enjoy intelligent, engaging buildings and design space, get a bit antsy about having to endure too much architecture talk. Because you know, architectural enthusiasts can be insufferable name droppers. They get fussy about style definitions. They get snarky in their opinions. And then there's the whole maze of terms to navigate, colonnades and balustrades, fenestration and facades, pergolas and parapets, post and beam, board and batten. Not to worry, our guide doesn't dumb down the topic, but the approach is to be informative while administering a succinct, light touch. And you know, when you're talking about Los Angeles, there's such a wide variety of architecture. Includes many examples of buildings that are entertaining or flamboyant, mystifying, or just simply lovable, that the topic really never gets too dry here. For each of the listings, we address the who, the what, the where, and the when of these features, and sometimes also the how and the why. The Gebhard Winter Guide identifies these places in the context of the neighborhoods in which they're located, and also in the context of the other architecture that's nearby. So talk first about how the book is organized, because our guide is about cities, communities, and neighborhoods. This key map is in the front of the volume. It's a 2-page spread that illustrates how first we take the county and we organize it into 13 geographical chapters. And our book has 97 sections, so those sections are organized within, these chapters, and we strive to reach all over the county, from Palmdale to Wilmington, from Pomona to Agoura Hills, and there are more than 2,300 entries found in the guidebook. So then on the next level, each chapter begins like this. It's a 2-page spread again, illustrating roughly the sections in that chapter. And locally, as an example, we call Chapter 4 Greater Hollywood. You can get an idea how the sections lay out on the right. It's a little hard to see from where you're sitting, I'm sure. Here at Skylight, we're sitting in Section D, Los Feliz. I would also add that we're very near to two other sections, the East Hollywood section as well as the Los Feliz Hills Griffith Park section. Each chapter and each section begin with a short essay about the histories, the current trends, and some of the highlights about the built environment in each section and what makes them unique from the others. So let's, a few words about where the book is from. So David Gebhard, he passed away in 1996. He was a Minnesotan. He came to California in the early 60s. And from 1961 until his death, he was a faculty member at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He taught architectural history. He was once president of the National Society of Architectural Historians. Although David was not an architect, he designed a home for his parents in St. Paul and then later built a house for his own family in Montecito. Robert Winter, who I will alternatively slip into calling Bob, another Midwesterner from Indiana. He came to California in the early 50s. He started as a UCLA faculty member for 7 years, but then after that he was really a famous and beloved faculty member of Occidental College for 31 years in the history department. In 1972, Robert Winter purchased on the lower left here, the Pasadena Royal Seco home that was built in 1909 by and for the master tile maker Ernest Batchelder. And Bob's lived there ever since. He's now thoroughly associated with this house, associated with the Royal Seco, and with the arts and crafts movement. And this picture, again, maybe a little hard to see it from where you're at, is lower right, is a recent photo just last Thanksgiving when we got our new books, and I was able to give them the new one. So then you may say, well, yeah, I get Gebhard, I get Winter, but who are you? And that's a fair question. I was a student of Bob Winter's at Occidental 50 years ago. I stayed close to him, and at the end of 2015, he asked me to come on board to get a new edition of the guide out. I am not a trained architectural historian. My reputation in this city, such as it is, comes from the two books that I wrote and self-published that he just mentioned about discovering the city while walking in it. In 8 years, I've led more than 200 exercise/information walks, averaging about 10 miles each. And over that period, about 5,000 people participated in these events, including a couple of my regulars are here tonight. I might also add that I'm local to here. I attended King Middle School and Marshall High School, each about a 20-minute walk from here. So here, another image is a little better if it's on a big screen, but I just want to say a little about the process. In some respects, I did blow up the old edition and rebuild it with transplants from the last edition mixed in with a lot of new stuff. Bob Winter would go over that last version repeatedly and wrote me hundreds of notes like these that advised me, well, cut this, reevaluate this, rewrite this. We've added more than 250 projects that have been completed since that 2003 version, but we also went back and reconsidered important architecture that the old editions might have missed. So in doing so, we'd added another 450 projects built before 2003. That last edition was ready for a good house cleaning. We dropped 500 entries that they either no longer existed, they're out of sight from the street, or they just didn't measure up to the better examples we found to put in their place. We corrected mistakes, we updated facts, we updated the introductory narratives about the towns, the neighborhoods that the architecture is part of. And we made sure all the addresses were in number and street format so you could bring them up simply with the apps in your devices. And I cherish this comments lower right that Bob made in some book text that I gave him to review. It reads, "You have much knowledge and write in the high spirits that David and I tried to provide, but you do not go too far." And I think that sums up my goals for this project. So as we sit here at Skylight, this is the center of a particularly rich area for architecture. So I want to use a group of work that is less than a mile away from here as the crow flies to illustrate some of the broader topics and personalities and trends that play throughout the guidebook for the entire county. So, you know, the spots I'm going to talk about are illustrated by block dots, and the star in the middle is where we are at Skylight. Vista Theater. Vista Theater is actually a feature that I selected to add to Gebhard Winter. It wasn't in there before. And I'm going to go through these pretty fast. I have more images than I have time to talk, really. The interior is Egyptian in nature, and the exterior is Spanish colonial revival. Of course, the Innes house is like a beacon seen from all over the area. Frank Lloyd Wright was experimenting with his textile block process in these years. The Innes house is the most massive of the 4 regional textile block houses he built. We have, in the guidebook, we have about 9, I think it's 9 Frank Lloyd Wright works. The Franklin Avenue or Shakespeare Bridge, just east of here, a great open spandrel arc, laced by long Gothic arches. At each end of the bridge are groups of Gothic edicule. David Gebhard wrote that these Gothic frames simply cried out for someone to add in sculptured saints, but we never got the saints. Frank Lloyd Wright's son, of course. We have 24 examples in our guide of his work all over the area, from North Hills in the Valley to Rancho Palos Verdes. At the Sowden House on Franklin Avenue, the previous owner had cultivated such thick foliage that it really did start to resemble a ruin in the Mayan jungle. And I'm overjoyed that just in the last year and a half or so, it's been trimmed back and wonderful landscaping. You could actually see the house very well again. Bernard Maybeck, a very important California architect, particularly in the Bay Area. This is one of his very few Los Angeles works on Waverly Drive. It was one of the architect's most romantic houses anywhere, which is saying a lot. And the general effect is medieval, but Maybeck thought nothing of bringing in elements of other styles to get the desired effects. And of course, this is the house in the center of the whole controversy with Katy Perry and Dana Hollister and the Archdiocese and Sisters of the Immaculate Heart. Los Angeles is very fortunate. Paul Revere Williams was born here in 1894. He lost both of his parents by the age of 6, and yet he went on to become a master architect, practicing in many different styles across 5 decades. At the age of 29, Paul Williams became the first African-American member of the American Institute of Architects. And in our book, we list examples of his work in lavish districts such as La Cañada Flint Ridge, Beverly Hills, Windsor Square, and this one, which is on Cromwell near Berendo. But his work is all over LA. We have a bank of his in Van Nuys. We have a housing tract he did in Rancho Palos Verdes. And I think Michael Locke is if you don't know Michael Locke, he's from Silver Lake, Los Feliz. He's just a wonderful resource. His Flickr page is incredible. From Leland Bryant, here in Los Feliz are 6 stories of French chateau-esque with glorious turrets and chimneys. The main building has 28 units, and then there's this separate 3-story maisonette apartment that creates kind of an L shape. And very near to there, the Casa Laguna on Franklin is an 18-unit Spanish Andalusian garden court apartment by a pair, husband and wife, who designed many of the most successful examples in Los Angeles of the Spanish courtyard apartments. This is one of a group of 8 cottages on Griffith Park Boulevard, pretty well known, sometimes called the Snow White cottages. Probably the most fanciful of the many bungalow courtyard arrangements that we list in our guide. May seem a bit of a distance, but it is within a mile as the crow flies. The observatory which of course carries all sorts of story for the entire region. John C. Austin was an important figure in Los Angeles architecture from about 1900 to 1948. He was on the star team of architects that designed the Los Angeles City Hall, for example. A big concern of our guide is listing some of the monumental restoration and rehabilitation work that has been occurring, particularly in this century. So we dedicate space in many of our entries, including like the observatory, to describe when a building was restored and who did the work. The streamlined modern style is very popular, emphasized a feeling of movement with rounded corners, often a nautical image. We associate that style chiefly with the late 1930s, expressed in Los Angeles most fervently in downtown at the Coca-Cola bottling plant. But we also find it in civic buildings and schools, in some apartment groups, and in single-family homes like this one on Newdale Drive right off of Talmadge. This is on the market, by the way. So a discussion of influential architects in this area is sure to quickly include the two Austrians who each arrived in Los Angeles from in the early 1920s, being R.M. Schindler and Richard Neutra. And they stayed on here practicing the international and modern style. Our book locates dozens of works for each of them. We've already seen in the introduction to Neutra at his best in the Lovell House up in the hills above Los Feliz Boulevard. Here is a Schindler right across, right near the Shakespeare Bridge. And the hills that surround us here, especially in the north and the east, are very dramatic. They include some lovely hillside treatment with quality mid-20th century homes, including this one. Eugene Kin Choi was a local architect. He based out of Silver Lake. And after I.M. Pei, he was the first Chinese American to join the AIA. Our book has about 24 examples of John Lautner's work. This was his only school project. With this odd folded roof and skylights and windows, and there's a group of, it's not just a single building, there's a group of them. Some people have compared them to like sort of an assembly of tents. His connection to this, this is right looking down from the Shakespeare Bridge, if you don't know it. It is now the French Lycée. Excuse me. The connection of Lautner to that school was that Kenneth Reiner was an early founder and parent of the Midtown School, and Reiner was Lautner's client for the famous Silvertop House above Silver Lake. Craig Elwood, big in the 70s, 80s, 90s, was a particular favorite of Bob Winter's. This triangular office structure with lots of glass is turned at an angle from Western Avenue. It's easy to miss because of the trees around it. It's just it's a wonderfully elegant building. Our guide lists quite a few train stations and transit stations, old and new. This red line station is right next to LACC, and it's particularly enchanting at night with that sort of almond eye. Just outside of Prospect Studios, this started once as a fairly dull 1939 house. Glenn Howard Small was one of the 7 co-founders of the SciArc Architecture School. And he was just getting started with his swirling vision for structure, and this was a remodel he did, and the project was actually completed by a student of his. One of the things I mentioned in the introduction is where the guide in 1965 might have been very much about houses. The residential work that gets the attention in this era is much more about housing. And that includes, like this, many transit-oriented design projects. These apartments were built right above the Hollywood Western Red Line station. So that was my Los Feliz group. So as I started this project in 2005, one of the things I had to kind of convince myself about is this question. Because, all these internet sources are free, their content is mostly excellent. They're all were vital to me as I learned new things to help verify or expand the repeat entries, and as I sought out quality buildings to add. So why pay good money for a conventional book? Well, these sources typically have a focus or a niche. They might specialize in a neighborhood, a particular architect, or a particular style or historic period. Our guide is built with listings that include the whole regional spectrum of neighborhoods, architects, styles, and periods. There's really nothing else available that is so inclusive while remaining concise. So I demonstrated how the guidebook can feature a whole variety of architectural sources and styles within the single neighborhood around Los Feliz. Now I'm just going to give you 10 quick examples all over the county to further illustrate the scope of the contents. In Monrovia, which Monrovia is a wonderful small town for architecture, there's a certain camp attraction that gathers enthusiasts to the Aztec Hotel. But architect Robert Stacy Judd in the 20s was dead serious about his desire to promote the pre-Columbian image into a great national architectural style, and that idea was kind of lost with him. Claremont is another great town to discover fine architecture, both on and off the college campuses. Here, architect Brenda Levin delicately and successfully updated an older building while staying completely faithful to the context of the beautiful Scripps College campus. Down in Santa Fe Springs, to be overly brief, much of the enthusiasm for Irving J. Gill focuses on his anticipation of the modern style that would dominate local architecture in the decades that followed his own period of practice. He was kind of a contemporary of Frank Lloyd Wright. He famously would pare away unnecessary detailing while embracing these white stucco surfaces, but interlaced with the archways, the mission image. The true modern image would get rid of the idea of the arch, because the archway would be more of a historical image or historical suggestion. Our book locates 13 of the houses built for the case study program all around the region, including this one along a canal in Naples and Long Beach. We locate and describe more than 3 dozen of the great motion picture theaters built in the area in the 20s and chiefly in the 30s, and this is one of the best. It doesn't quite look this good anymore, but still, you got to go down and see it. Yeah, it is, yeah. So just showing Venice, the 4 districts in the book that have the heaviest concentration of architecture that we describe are, number 1, the downtown historic core, the lower Arroyo Seco of Pasadena, Silver Lake, and Venice. This is another John Lautner on Malibu on the sand. The challenging with indexing Malibu is to locate work that the guidebook user can actually see and appreciate from the public space. And that public space might be the end of a street, or it could be on the beach. So we go to some length in describing how to see the houses that are on the shoreline. And then there's the whole idea of programmatic architecture, and who doesn't want to hear about a strip mall in Tarzana built in the shape of a grill of a Cadillac Fleetwood. Frank Gehry is our most famous contemporary architect. We associate him most, of course, with the Disney Concert Hall. But our guide has another 20 or so works to lead you to that come from, he had a 4-decade-long resume in the area pre-Disney Hall. This is actually right near the famous Bob's Big Boy in Burbank. Yeah. When I first began to grapple with the size of the book and what a revision would look like, I suggested to Bob that maybe we should just limit it to not to LA County, but to the LA Basin. And Bob countered immediately, well, we could not possibly do our book without listing this place far in the north of the county. And it is also just take the kids. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. So a word about the photos. More than half the pictures in this presentation are in the pages of the new edition, and everything I'm talking about is certainly in the new edition. We've used many images from slides shot by Bob Winter as early as the mid-60s, and some are remarkable because they provide a wonderful illustration of the structures before all the trees grow out, and sometimes they're enhanced with some good old cars in the frame. Our book also included 15 images made by the great Julia Schulman and archived by the Getty Research Institute. We have a few period images, including this one shot by my father, Clarence Inman, who is a professional photographer for the city of LA for more than 30 years, beginning in 1949. Oh, including that, not that one. This is my father's picture. Let's see. The last edition had 280 photos. This one has 350. The pictures in this edition are bigger, and I think they're better. Amy Inouye of Future Studios designed the book, and I think she did a beautiful job on it, as I knew she would. Most of the images in the book were shot by me, although I incorporate some period photos, both for this presentation for the book, because they have a certain appeal. I want to emphasize the great majority of the images in the edition were photographs since 2015. You know, we like to make reference to the past, but this book is about Los Angeles as it looks today. And throwing a nod to my friend Nathan Masters, who wrote the foreword, this book is not about lost LA, not wood. Finally, the participation of Angel City Press was key to getting this project done right. And I'm really honored to be associated with this publishing house. ACP demonstrated a really high regard for clarity and accuracy in the manuscript, and they just had a very faithful respect for the legacies of Gebhard and Winter. The cover photo came to us from the Morphosis firm. That's a corner of their Caltrans building on the right-hand side. This was on a night with some special dramatic lighting. And of course, that's our spectacular Los Angeles City Hall in the center that just celebrated a 90th birthday. So that's actually my presentation for today. I want to make two additional short notes. Number one, if you're familiar with the Architecture and Beyond series over a few blocks away at the Los Feliz Library, I will be speaking there Thursday, March 14, and I promise that program will be different from the one tonight. It's more interesting for me to try to mix it up. And also my gratitude to Skylight Books, especially Charles Hawther, for faithfully carrying my own book, Finding Los Angeles by Foot, on the shelves to sell. Self-publishing has its own challenges to getting your book seen. Every time I would write Charles and say, hey, you're out of my book, he would always quickly respond, well, send me 10 more. And there is only one on the shelf tonight, so I'm going to have to call him next week. But that's it. I'm happy to take, we're going to, questions, comments? Yes. I'm saying, and it's, actually I'm kind of doing a post-op study of what I ended up doing with the guide. I'm saying that we dropped 500 works, and I think about half of those were gone. And the truth is, some of them were gone even before the last edition. It's just that. Oh. Yeah, they were. I mean, homes of especially the modernists. A lot of those homes were not built on big budgets, and they were not built. They were built with small bedrooms, small kitchens. They were built with, as part of the whole modernist era, they're utilizing material that at the time, like plywood and these, aluminum frame windows that were you have to really keep up to translate it, and there's some people that really love it, and fortunately now we have a community of people that adore that stuff, but other people, there's so much in the whole thing about the cost of real estate in Los Angeles. People expect they want to maximize their investment, and that's one of the things we're fighting against. Yeah.
There's a house on Franklin Avenue, which I understand, it's kind of semi-falling apart, but obviously partially okay contained, and it's really chained and locked. And then they said that Lucille Ball had lived in that house at one time. Are you familiar? It's just west of the Bank of America, you know,
To tell you the truth, I'm not sure what that is. I can't really identify that. I mean, Franklin. Hi there, in the center.
How's Bob doing?
Good question. Bob is back home. Bob was in the hospital for a little while, and he went back home, I think, Saturday night. And things are looking up. I mean, I saw him in the hospital on Thursday, and but I had some feedback since, and we are maybe things are looking a little better than we thought they were on Friday. Hi.
do you know if they are still having problems with the Ennis house in terms of keeping it from disintegrating? Those blocks.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's be a lot of different opinions of people that really keep up with that. My impression is back on the market after it's being sold by Ron Burkle, but it was listed for a very high price. That in that price they say that I think it was listed like for $20 million. They say, well, we actually put in $16 million in restoration. It really looks a lot better. I remember, after the earthquake in the '90s and all the couple of years of El Nino rains, and everything was kind of it's like big deep channels underneath, and it looks pretty good. We did one of our walks by there the day after Christmas, and I would say it looks very good. Yeah.
Do you by any chance know the origin of the Egyptian sort of theme, like I'm thinking of the Egyptian theaters, and then also like the vista? I don't know if there's any other examples, but I'm wondering if there's a through line there that you're aware of.
Yeah, I think about that too, because it is a combination of when you have a case like I was talking about Stacey Judd, where it was important to him, and when he wasn't doing Egyptian, he was doing Mayan and other things. But there is certainly in the 20s, movies were really starting to get big, and there's just the idea of Los Angeles is to be different. I mean, Los Angeles wanted to set itself aside as being a different place, and one of the things they do is this place is full of fantasy, and of course the whole thing with the movies kind of instilled that. There's certain works that we have in this book that you almost there's this one guy did 3 or 4 different apartment courts, and you just say, this guy can't be serious. I mean, he just it's just with all these sort of fake hieroglyphics and things, and they're still with us, and so it's kind of a blend of, I think, of course, in the 20s there was a big thing with the Tutankhamun, and that swept that just caught the country by storm. And Los Angeles, where the East, they weren't really building then, and maybe they never would have built like that even if they wanted to. But Los Angeles was building plenty then, and they just, let's kind of, we're caught up in this whole thing.
So sorry, was it the same guy who did the Maya complex in Monrovia that did the vista? Is that what you said?
No, he didn't. No, it wasn't. I'm saying, there's different people. Yeah, and that's where it's interesting that it isn't just him, because you see it everywhere. I mean, it's a very common theme, and if it isn't Egyptian, because Yeah, you're right. Stacy Judd. I'm mixing my metaphors because Stacy Judd was not Egyptian. He didn't do Egyptian. He did more, Aztec, Mayan, whatever. But this Egyptian thing is a very common theme in LA building. Hi.
From your mention of SciArc, I'm wondering how common is repurposing an old building. Is that in your book?
Yeah, and it's a big deal now. I mean, I think that's one of the real big stories of architecture in the 21st century is that there's a lot of fascination and love for it, but to make a go out of it, of course, especially if you go, well, I mean, the SciArc in the the SciArc school now, the old railroad depot, that is in the book, and that's a good example of it. But I mean, all over the city, there's a lot of buildings that, while to save the building, they had to make it viable to today's market. So they've restored the buildings, rehabilitated it, but it also converted the interior to different uses. So it's a big deal. Hi. Hey, how's it going, Christian?
I think to focus on, because a lot of people have asked what's been lost, because like you said, I appreciate that the book is about what is here, and I'm always ranting about what we have. But I never asked you, did any, you mentioned Lloyd Wright, and then I remember the Lloyd Wright house in Rancho Palos Verdes was torn down when you were working on this book. How often did that happen, that you had to remove an entry as you were
As I was working, a couple. There was a Charles Moore in Bel Air that is, and it's beautiful. And so that's not that. That's maybe 1980s or something. Beautiful house, beautiful compound. There's something you really could see, and then there's a fire. It's right across from the Getty, and there's a fire, and you could barely see it anymore. And a couple of things. There was one in Highland Park. There's one by Avenue 53 and the Gold Line. That was more of an acquired taste. I mean, you really had to be looking for something like that. But that was, that burned down. And I'm sure there's several other cases. The Lloyd Wright house was lost before I started working on the book. Yeah, and one of the some of the biggest losses, like there's this Schindler house in Avalon that really, I mean, every time I see pictures of it, because it wasn't that long ago that we lost it. We lost it, I think, in the 90s. Of course, I guess looking at the book today from the last, what's the biggest loss is probably the Ambassador. Yes, sir.
Curious about how your stairwalking has informed your process for this book. There's kind of built if you would have been as well prepared for doing the update to this book if you had just been driving around and doing it in an automobile versus being out and doing it.
I think the whole process of walking, it slows you down, and you approach it maybe from the east, and then you see the north face, and you leave it from the west, and you have more time to ponder it when you do things with a group. I mean, that's one of the great things. One of the reasons I lead groups is people see things I don't see. So then they say, "Bob, did you see that? Or what is that?" And gee, I don't know. And so that's important too. I think I could have done this project without having done the Stairway books, but certainly my orientation to Los Angeles is very tied to the idea of seeing things on ground level, not just driving past them. Yes.
I wonder if you think ahead to, let's say, edition number 20 of this book. What kinds of stories might be told about LA architecture far into the future, and have we had our heyday, our golden age, architecturally, or might it be yet to come?
Wow. What were we talking? Didn't that come up yesterday? So, I haven't. I guess I'm so. I must admit, I mean, I like the new stuff, but I mean, the reason I go gaga over architecture is more for what's, been done, the the 19 teens and 20s and 30s, going up into the 60s, and so I guess that's my focus. I do more looking back than looking ahead. I'm fascinated. There's people talk about that a lot. I'm fascinated in hearing the discussions, but I don't know how that would play into a book like that. It's an interesting idea. Hi.
Just curious if you have any opinions about open, one room sort of home other than a provided big bathroom. Living dining room, everything is just one big room.
Well, I personally like it, but I think that's and that even it does bring up the when you do a book like this, it really is about exteriors because essentially you're leading people around to houses or buildings. If they're libraries or theaters, something like that, they can go in, but houses they can't. So in that sense, it is kind of superficial. So we don't get into how the interior layout works out so much, and that's one of the things that because certainly, say around Silver Lake, Neutra and Schindler had very strong. They built their own furniture. They had real strong ideas about how the house would be lived in, not just how it looks from outside, and with the preservation ordinances, everything. Usually, you can do what. Fortunately, a lot of people now who buy those houses are really believe in them, but there's plenty of people who they fix up the outside to represent what it looked like, but on the inside they do it what they will. Yeah. Okay.
We're seeing it from the outside, at least around here. I've noticed that there's a lot of. Well, the house will be beautiful, but they put up a 10-foot hedge around it so you can't see it.
Oh.
Your experience?
Yeah, and this area is hardly the worst of it. That's one of the big things about this book too. Is and that's one thing Bob said to me in the beginning, and I was on wholeheartedly. One of the good things about having so much enthusiasm for the topic now, there's lots of internet resources, and something goes in the market, and Curbed has this great lots of pictorials, and you can we would drop things, important buildings, if you couldn't see it, even though they're very important. There's maybe about 8 or 9 that they're so important that we would just say, well, apologies, we know you can't see this, but it's so important we have to mention it's there. But on the whole, in fact, there's one, thinking of things I took out, there's a Roland coat on Los Feliz Boulevard, right on the edge of where the, that estate, Cecil DeMille, and you think, well, it's right on the boulevard, but there's a huge hedge, and it's right by one of the gates. Yeah, and you can't see anything of it, and that's when I had to strike. And now, fortunately, I am, by wonderful providence, I am hooked up with a publisher who just did a book on Roland Coat, and their book is beautifully illustrated and it talks about lots of, so it's not like by my dropping it from this guidebook, it's going to slip under the horizon. Because there's still plenty of enthusiasm, there's plenty of other resources. So, given that, I'm happy if anyone wants to get a book signed or anything, but thank you for coming. It's a lot of fun.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.